Okay, so I'm giving you the link again, just in case you don't have it on hand. Hey, why didn't my paste work? Oh, pressing Alt. I've been using a Mac at my other job, so mixing up the Alt and the command buttons. Alright, so we left off with this one. So here's what we have. We've got a navigation bar, and we've added this nice little button here, which we can click on to bring our buttons down. Okay, and I temporarily added, like, I have home, about me, gallery, home, about me, gallery. Well, I did that just so I could demonstrate, like, in case you have a longer menu, it's not really gonna fit like this. So that's why it would be necessary to create a button this way. And right now there's this tiny little problem here that I don't like. It's kind of bothering me. It's whenever I resize the screen, you can still see the menu for a split second. It's still there. I think we can figure out how to fix that. I just need to open VS Code here. Alright, so just to go over real quick how we're doing that. I used something called a media query, which looks at the screen size. So if you inspect and you make this bigger and smaller, at least in Chrome it does this, it shows you the screen size right there. So I chose around 800 pixels. You can see right when I get to 800 pixels up there, you might not be able to see it because it's kind of small, but it shows 800 by 928 pixels up there. And as I stretch, like right now it's at 500, now it's at 870. But at the 800 point, that's when the menu closes and then this button appears. Okay, that's because I created this thing right here. At media screen and max width 800 pixels. So this just means at 800 pixels or less, these styles will take over and they will replace anything that's above. Okay, so you can override those styles up there. So at that screen size, I changed the height of the navigation to 0. At first I was using display none, but the problem with display none is you can't really animate that, so you can't add a transition. So I hid it by using height 0. So as long as you have a height 0 and overflow hidden, if it doesn't fit inside 0 pixels, of course nothing will fit there, you won't see it. And it still has a width, even though it has a height of 0 and you can't see it, there's still a width, so it is still taking up some horizontal space. So because of that, I had to use position absolute, which is a way to basically remove something out of normal document flow, basically like lifting it off the page so it doesn't take up any space, and then positioning it wherever you want, relative to the nearest parent that has a position set to something other than static. Now, I didn't really properly go over position absolute, static, and relative. And then there's also sticky. We'll use sticky, I think, for creating a sticky header. We'll probably use that, but it's one of those things that's kind of confusing to learn. But I'll try to explain it real quick, just so you get an idea. But for this, I'm just going to create a separate file just to make it easy to understand. I'll just create just a simple Actually, I'll have to create a folder. Call this positioning. Let me open VS Code here as well. Right, so here we can create a new index.html, create our default boilerplate, and then let's begin by creating a couple of divs. So I'll make one div here, and I'll give it a class equals outer div. And then inside that, I'll create let's do one for each type. There's position static, there's position relative, and absolute. And fixed. Forgot about fixed. Okay. So we'll make the first one. I'll give this one class equals um, static. Class equals relative. Class equals absolute. And class equals fixed. Now, by themselves, these class names are obviously not doing anything. They're just class names I'm giving them. So here, I'll create a internal style here. And we'll say whatever has the fixed class on it is going to be position fixed. And whatever has relative will be position relative. And whatever has what's next, absolute, we'll give that. Why did I put a colon there? Whatever has absolute will have position absolute. And whatever has a fixed class on it, we'll make it position fixed. Alright, so now these class names are doing something. Now also, I'm gonna style them and give them some different background colors.
Excuse me, sir. Stream paused.
Oh, it did? Why did it pause? When Bernadette is here. Um, it's I don't know why it's swap your application to resume. Oh, you know what? I'm probably streaming the wrong thing. Hold on. Now you can see it. Okie dokie. And Bernadette's saying she can't join us. Let me invite her. Okay, well, I sent her an invite to our voice channel. I think that was her problem. She couldn't join the voice channel. Send her that one too, in case. Alright, so I created an outer div, and I put 4 divs inside just to demonstrate each type of positioning. Okay, yay, Bernadette joined us. Alright, so we have static, relative, absolute, and fixed. So there's position, fixed, relative. Wait, why did I put fixed twice? Static. Well, static is the default, so you don't really have to put it. It's already gonna be static. Why did I put fixed there? Should be static. But anyways, we don't need to put that there because it's just by default, everything is static. So static just means things are gonna show up where you would expect depending on where you put it in the HTML. So if this div is here, then it's gonna come before the other ones. If this one is third here, then it's gonna be third on the page. Okay, but we can't really see them right now because they don't have any background color or width or height. So it's just going to be a blank page right now, but they're there. We just need to give them shape and color. So for all of them, I'll just target all of them by saying div div. That just means div inside a div. We could be more specific. We could say div inside class of outer dash div. So any div inside the outer div, I want them to be, say, width of 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels, and background color. Let's just pick something random here, like crimson. Also, I should write something inside each div so you know which one's which. So here I'll just write static, relative, absolute, and fixed. There's one more, there's also sticky, but I'll show you how to use sticky later. We'll be using it to create a sticky navigation, one that sticks to the top even when you're scrolling. You could use fixed to do that as well, but sticky was like a later addition, which works better than fixed. Anyways, there's what it looks like. And we can also make them all display flex just to center the text inside. So justify content center. Save that. That should put them in the middle, and then align items center, and put them inside the center, and maybe give them a border just so you can tell it's not just one long rectangle. Let's say border 2 pixels solid, just black is fine. Okay, so you can see there's 3 boxes, and if you want to see the outer div, we should also give that one style. Outer, oops, outer dash div. Let's give that one a width of, let's make it much bigger, like 600 pixels, and a height of 600 pixels, because we're putting all of those inside. And maybe I'll just give it a border. Let's just give it a background color. Let's make it something light but still visible, like khaki. Okay, let's make that a little bit. Let's pick a different color. Light salmon, how about that? That should show up better. Okay, so let me turn off all of the positioning styles for a second to see if it makes a difference. We've got relative, absolute, fixed. Put those correctly. Okay, let's just turn these off for a second so they're all static to begin with. Okay, so you'll notice now one extra one showed up, right? Now we have static, relative, absolute, and fixed all here. But what happens when I make one of them relative? Uncomment that. Okay, let's just comment these and leave that one uncommented. So when you put something as position relative, nothing really changes. You see the relative is still where it was. Let me do this so we can kind of see it live. Right? But what happens when you use position relative, absolute, or fixed? You can start using a new property, or 4 new properties: top, bottom, left, and right. So if I say top 200 pixels, actually that's too much. Let's make it like 20 pixels. So when I put top 20 pixels, you can see this, the one that I put relative moved down 20 pixels. So when you say top 20 pixels, it just means move away from the top 20 pixels. If I say bottom 20 pixels, it's going to move up 20 pixels. If I say top negative 20 pixels, it's also going to move up 20 pixels. You could use negative numbers for these as well. So relative just means when you make something position relative, you can start using top, bottom, left, and right to move it relative to where it normally would be if it was static. Okay, so I could say right 20 pixels, and then you can see it moved away from the right 20 pixels. Okay, so that's position relative. Now, as long as you don't put anything, if you don't put top, right, or anything, you're still going to be able to change it from static to something else, and it's not going to really go anywhere. It's going to stay where it is. It only moves if you add one of these: top, bottom, left, or right. Now with absolute, let's comment this. Let's comment the fixed one out. So with absolute, you'll notice what just happened. Absolute is here, but let me make sure I put it on the correct thing. Position fixed, absolute, absolute. Yeah, okay, so uncomment that. Comment this one out, save it. Alright, so whenever one of them is absolute, it's kind of unexpected what's gonna happen when you change it to absolute. It might stay where it was, like in this case, it stayed where it is. But notice the fixed one moved away because, like I said, whenever you change something to absolute, it gets lifted off the page. So it's basically not taking up any space anymore. So what happened to the fixed box? It actually moved underneath absolute. So if I moved absolute to the right a little bit by using, we can say left. You can also use top, bottom, left, and right on absolute, but the way it moves is going to be different. It's not going to move relative to where it normally would be. It's going to move relative to either the entire page. So if I say, let's say right 0, it's going to move all the way to the right of the page. And then now you can see that there's the fixed one. It was underneath absolute, so you couldn't see it. But since I said right 0, it's all the way on the right side now. Like if I say top 0, it's gonna stick to the top right corner. So top 0, right 0 means stick to the top right. It means move 0 pixels away from the top and 0 pixels away from the right of the closest parent that has position set to anything other than fixed. And in this case, there is no parent that has anything set to something other than fixed. The parent would be the outer div and the body and the HTML. But since there isn't anything, it just moves relative to the page. So it just uses the top right corner of the page. Now, if I change that, if I give outer div something other than static, which right now it's just static because it doesn't have a position. If I change that to position static, or sorry, it's already static. Let's change it to relative. Most of the time, if I'm just giving the parent something other than static, it's going to be relative because again, relative is the safe one where it won't move unless you tell it to move. The other ones, absolute and fixed, might move unpredictably. So with position relative, it's going to stay where it was, the parent that is, but it's going to let me position the child inside, which is going to be this absolute div. It's going to let me move it relative to now the outer div instead of the whole page. So notice how it's not sticking to the top of the page anymore. Now it's sticking to the top of the parent because the parent is not static anymore. It's something other than static. So it doesn't matter if it's relative, absolute, or fixed, as long as it's not static. The one child that's absolute will move relative to that parent. So top 0, right 0 means move 0 pixels from the top and 0 pixels from the right of that outer div. So if I said right like 200 pixels and top, let's say 20 pixels, let's save that. You can see now it moved 200 pixels away from the right side and 20 pixels from the top. So I said top 20 pixels, so it moved down 20 pixels from here and 200 pixels away from this side. Okay. So relative moves relative to where it normally would be. Absolute moves relative to the nearest parent that has position set to something other than static. Okay. Fixed. The next one. Fixed will stay where it is no matter what. If I had, well, right now I can't really scroll the page, but if my page was taller, here I'll make my page taller for a second. I'll say body height 2000 pixels. So now I could scroll down. You'll notice the one that's position fixed is just going to stay where it is. And you can move it relative to the page. So if I say top, or let's say right 50 pixels and top 50 pixels, it's always going to be stuck right there, 50 pixels away from the top and 50 pixels away from the right side. Okay, so you might want to use that for your header to say top 0 and just have it like stuck to the top always, so even when you're scrolling your header is there. But the problem with that is other objects on the page don't really recognize that it's there. Just like absolute, it gets lifted off the page so it doesn't take up any space. So you end up with stuff going underneath of it. So if I, for example, put this here, like it'll just go underneath it and it won't get pushed away. So if you have content on your page and you have a big header here that's fixed, it might be hiding stuff underneath it. So what you have to do is just add some extra padding or margin to make up for that. So since this has a height of 100 pixels, remember I gave these all a height of 100 pixels, I would have to probably either give the body like a margin top of 100 pixels just to move everything down. So at least, when the page first loads, nothing will be hiding behind it. You could still obviously scroll behind it. And then here, let me give it a width of 100%. Say whatever has a class of fixed, change the width to 100%. How come it didn't change? Oh, because I have to be more specific. Here I'm saying outer div width 100 pixels. Outer div is actually more specific than just something with the class of fixed. So I would have to be a little bit more specific. I'd have to say either div fixed or outer div fixed, just to add a little bit of to be a little more specific about that selector. So yeah, so now these things won't hide underneath because I gave the body some margin on the top. So if I didn't do that though, let's go here. If I didn't add this margin top on the body, then yeah, the page would load and there's gonna be stuff hiding underneath already. So that's why you would add the margin. But besides that, the other problem is sometimes you have links, like for example, right here at the bottom, I'm gonna just put I'll just put an anchor. Actually, I'll make it a paragraph. Scroll to here. It's over here right now, but let's make this scroll to here go all the way to the bottom of the page. I'm actually gonna take it out of this outer div, so it's outside now. But actually, it's fine right there. I'm just putting something there that I can scroll to. I'm gonna give it an ID equals I'll just call it anchor. Anchor ID equals anchor, and let's create a link somewhere. I'll just create a link inside the fixed div. Pretend this is like a navigation. I'll just make fixed a link itself. Say href equals anchor. Okay, so since I put a href equals anchor, remember the a tag is for links, but instead of putting a link to another website with http:// something, I just put forgot the hashtag there actually. I just put the ID that I'm trying to scroll to. Since there's a paragraph here with the ID of anchor, if I click on this, it's gonna try to scroll to it. So if I click here, you see it scrolls to here, but the problem again, because this is fixed, this just gets hidden underneath. So that's another problem. That's why I wouldn't use fixed if I wanted my header to stay up at the top. Instead, you could use position sticky. So let's change this to say sticky. Call this sticky. And we'll say div dot sticky. Make that position. Actually, instead of adding all of that, let me just leave this as fixed. And we'll just change this to sticky. Okay, so you see sticky is a little bit different. It's not stuck at the top right away. It sticks there when I scroll and then it reaches the top, then it just sticks there. And then eventually it goes away. I don't know. Why is it doing that? I'm not sure. Maybe because I put it inside this div. But anyways, it sticks to the top, and if I click this, you could see, I could still see the scroll to here, but that's because it's disappearing. Let me do this a little differently. Let me take this out of the outer div. Just put it here. Oh, since I did that, now this is gonna have to change. It's not div fixed anymore. It's just fixed. And also, let's not remove that. Let me just add fixed. Just copy paste all this. Okay. Alright, so now it doesn't disappear. It just sticks up there. When I click it, I guess it still hides it, but how can we deal with that? Let me put this before. I'll move this, instead of coming after the outer div, I'll put it before. Because it's supposed to be a nav, so it would be one of the first things on the page. I guess it still hides it, so it's not that much better than fixed, but what you could do is just give this some padding on the top, I guess. So for the anchor, let's give it padding top 100 pixels. Oh, that didn't really do anything. Why not? Oh, because I spelled it wrong. Okay, so if you give this anchor some padding on the top, 100 pixels, enough to cover the height of the navigation. In this case, it has a height of 100 pixels. So I just gave the anchor a height of 100 pixels. So whenever I click this, it scrolls to it, and then I could even maybe increase it a little bit. Let's say 120 pixels, so we have some extra space. Okay, but then the problem with that is you have to have 120 pixel padding on top. Might be a problem, might not be a problem, but that's the same way you would fix that issue if this was fixed instead of sticky. Change it back to fixed. That's pretty much the same thing. So sticky and fixed are sort of similar, except sticky will only stick to wherever you put it at. So it'll be where it normally is, but if you say top 0 and you scroll up, and once it reaches the top 0, it'll stick there. but um, but it'll just go wherever you put it. So if I moved it back down after the outer div, now if it's fixed, it's still gonna be up there, but if I change it to sticky, um, you'll see it starts off down here and then it sticks whenever it gets up there. Right, so that's relative, absolute, sticky, and fixed. So just quick explanation of those positioning properties. Now I'm gonna close that and hopefully now it'll make more sense. I'm gonna delete that. Hopefully this makes more sense. Now why I put position absolute on the navigation. And I gave it top 30 and right. Wait, what am I looking at here? Yep, okay, yeah, that's the right one. So I gave the nav top 30 pixels, right 20 pixels, because the navigation is inside the header. Um, and actually in this case, I'm not using the header as like a parent that I want to stick to. I'm just using the page. I'm letting the nav stick to the top right of the page, but just 30 pixels down and 20 pixels from the right. So it's always on that side. If I didn't do that, I took this out, it's gonna look like that. So yeah, I'm just having it stick to that right side. Whenever I click this button, it comes out of there. And that's why it wasn't, that's why I ended up putting top 30. I originally wanted to put top 0 and I was wondering why it's not doing what I wanted to do. That's because it's not moving relative to the header. So if I give the header position relative, remember that's the safe one. It doesn't really change the position of the header unless I add top, bottom, left, or right. But now this will move relative to this. So if it says top 0, it's gonna stick to the top of the navigation, but I think we want bottom 0 maybe. Oh no, that's gonna move up. Actually, I think I did put relative. Yeah, I did. I didn't forget that. I just put it up on the original header, so I don't need to put it twice. So yeah, I don't know why. Actually, it would help if I gave it a background color so I could see exactly where it is. Oh, okay, there it is. So it is sticking to the top 0, but we kind of want it to be top. Oh, and that height that I gave it, where did it go? Remember, I gave it a height of 300 pixels. So it's a little more than it needs, so we could lower that to 250. Yeah, that's better. Or you could even go to 30. Okay, yeah, that looks better. Alright, so now go back and get rid of that background color. And I'll say top. What's the height of the navigation? It was like 70 pixels. So yeah, it will just come out from there. And actually, we should give it a dark, same color as this. That would be a good idea. Whatever color this is. Where did I add that color? Oh, colors. I'm using indigo dye. I forgot I created these um, variables here. We want to use indigo dye for the background. of the navigation, but we only need it for this screen size. Background color var -- indigo dye. There we go. I think that looks better. I kind of want it to stick more to the right side. Let me add right 0 and maybe change the width of that. Maybe 120. Yeah, I think that's better. We could also make the font much bigger because it's supposed to be on a mobile device, so you want it to be bigger buttons. If you click on this with your finger, you don't want the buttons to be all tiny like that, so why don't we increase the size? Say font size. Let's say let's start with double the size to EM. Oh, and now since we're increasing the font size, I'm also gonna have to increase the width and the height. Let's do that. Let's go up to 2.5, and now the height and the width are gonna have to be bigger. I'll say 200 for the width, and for the height, whenever it grows, when we focus on the menu button, change the height to, let's try 430. I just have to play around with it till it's the right size. I think that looks good enough. Might as well, let's go up to like 530. 500. That's good enough. Okay. Now when I click and I click again, yesterday it was closing. I don't know why it wasn't supposed to be closing, but if I click here, because I'm still focused on the button, so it stays open. But you want it to be you want this to be a toggle button. You want it to open and close when you click on it. But right now it only opens it. But I have to click somewhere else to close it. We still have that issue where it shows for a little split second and then it disappears. What we could do is have it not transition on the way back. Just have it transition when it's appearing. So where did I add the transition? I added it here. So we could just take that, cut it out, and put it here. So I'm only putting it on the focus part. So remember, these are both nav. It's just instead of putting it on the original nav selector, I'm putting it on the selector for focusing. So I think now it will only transition when I'm opening it, but when I close it, it won't animate. So I think that will make it so, yeah, it doesn't show like this. It just disappears quickly. Oh no, we can't do that because then I can't click the buttons. We still have to leave it there. Yeah, that's why I put it there in the first place. I think I originally put it here and I moved it here. And now I was moving it back, but I remember why I can't do that. Because it won't let me click the buttons if it doesn't animate. Give me a delay. What we can do though, I think, is this, because whenever I shrink the screen, you see it for a second because actually, what can we do about this? We're transitioning the height. Height 0. Wonder if we could still do display none. Then we won't see it at all. If I do that, then it won't animate, so can't really do that. Oh, well, we'll have to accept that for now until I figure out how to fix it. But the width seems too small because about me should be about me next to each other, but it's going to the next line. So let me make that wider as well. Okay, that's better. Cool. So I guess that's good enough for now. Maybe give them some padding too. Give those buttons some padding. So nav ul li padding, let's say 10 pixels. So they're a little bit separated, not so close together. Makes it easier to click. Cool. And this was supposed to become like a portfolio page. So if I spent time trying to show you how to turn these 3 lines into an X and then have it toggle open and close when you click on it, it's gonna take too long. So I'll skip that, and instead I'll show you how to create a gallery using display grid. So we need a gallery page now. We've created the home page. There's an about me gallery. And also we're done demonstrating why we needed to create that button. So let me get rid of the extra ones. But then now I'm gonna have all that extra space. So I also have to change the height now. Instead of 500, let's do half of that. Okay, so that's fine. Now to create the new page, you just create another HTML file in the same folder as the index file. So here I'll do about.html, and it will also create a gallery.html, and we'll start off by copying everything from here. So it's important to do the header first for this reason, because you're gonna put the same header on every page. So might as well, take care of the header before you copy paste it everywhere. And then in order for us to tell which page we're on, because right now you can't really tell. If I click about me, it looks exactly the same as the home page. Gallery looks exactly the same because I just copy pasted. So let's add an h1 first thing after the header. Now this is the home page, so I'll write home and copy that. On the about page, again, paste it after the header and just type about, and then on the gallery page, type gallery, so we know what page we're on. So we'll go back here. Okay, so it's not pretty because it's just there, but at least we know what page we're on. I click home, I'm on home. I click about me, I'm on about. Click gallery, I'm on gallery. Okay, so you can style that a little bit nicer if you want. Oh, also, here you can decide how do you want to do your CSS. I think since we're using @import, we should probably do the same thing for the other pages because index.html is linking to styles.css, but so is about.html. They're all linking to styles.css. So instead of creating another CSS file and linking it like this and saying it like saying about.css or gallery.css and having to link it again, why don't we just create those new CSS files? We'll do an about.css and a gallery.css, and we'll just import them the same way we imported the colors and the Google font. So we'll say @import URL about.css and then @import URL gallery.css. So you have to be careful though if you're doing it this way because since all the styles are together, it's like putting them all on one style sheet. So that means you're gonna have to give, if you want to style the gallery page different than the home page, then you got to make sure you create specific classes for the things you want to style differently on the gallery page, or else you're gonna have like problem overriding previous styles because you gave them the same name or you targeted them the same way. But anyway, now we should be able to create our, let's do the about first because it's going to be simple. So about.html, we'll just do that h1 that says about. We could give it a class equals title. Let's put that same class equals title on the other ones. On gallery h1, we'll put class equals title, save. And on index.html, the h1 that says home, we'll add class equals title. So, because they're all going to be titles of the page, and we want the titles to look the same, so. And I'll add that in styles.css. Before the media query, though. We'll say title. Let's give it a font. Actually, should we change how many fonts did I include? I forgot. Go to my @import. Where is it? So I imported Josephine Sands. I guess that's the only one I imported. I don't have a I thought I might have a separate font that I brought for just headings, but I'll just use Josephine Sans. So we'll just change the color for now. Color, make it var dash dash. Which one was the white color? Was it French? No, that's brown. Was it Magnolia? Yeah. Okay, so there's the home page. Now we want the titles to have some padding, like maybe 20 pixels. And we want them to be centered. Home, about me, gallery. That looks great, I guess. And then on the about me, we'll just have like a paragraph with some generic about me, and then maybe a picture or something somewhere. I'll start using CSS grids right here. I'll make this a 2-column thing. So we'll have like a picture and some text. Oh, and this reminds me, we don't have the footer yet. We should probably create a footer because that's going to go on every page. Footer will just be at the bottom of the page. But maybe we'll add that later because we kind of need content to push the footer down. So we'll skip the footer for now. I'll just create the picture and the text here. So sorry, I got disrupted for a second. All right, we're gonna have to create a couple divs inside the about page. What's box 1 and box 2? What was I doing with those? Box 1, box 2. I don't know why those are there, but let's get rid of those. I think I have that on because I copy pasted it from the home page. I don't need a box. I was probably gonna do some sort of example. I just left it there. Delete those boxes. Okay, so on the about page, let's create a main. And main just means, it's like the main section. You could also make it section, or it could be a div, but my main content is gonna be here, so I'm gonna call it main. All right, we got the header, we got our title, and then we've got our main content. You might want to include the title in the main content. I don't know, it's up to you how you organize it. Maybe you want that inside there, but I'll just keep the title separate, and then we'll have main. And inside main, I'm gonna have two things. We're gonna have one image, and we'll say source equals. I'll just go online and find something real quick, generic picture to use. Um, Sorry, getting distracted again. Messages. Uh, Bernadette, the other Bernadette is saying you can't submit some old assignments or something. So let me know what you need me to do. I think like which class do you need to submit it for. But anyway, I'll take care of that like during the break or something. Just remind me. So image source equals, and then I'm gonna find some generic picture to use. We'll go to Unsplash. And it's gonna be an about me page. So what do you think should go in an about me page? Probably a picture of a person or something. Like if you're a photographer, you might have like a picture of yourself like this with the camera on your about me page. So why don't we do that? We'll just download this. Actually, let's download something nicer. About me. What could we use? Let's just go with that. Download. We don't need it to be too big. What's this size right here? That's probably medium size. Well, you want it to be big enough to cover half the page. So I don't think it needs to be 1920 by 2652. I'll just do 640 by 884. But then that might be too small. Let's just do the medium size. Show in folder. We'll cut that out. Oops, why is that still there? I had to submit that somewhere. Left it there. Paste it inside the portfolio page. Let's change it to a shorter name just so it's easier. About me.jpg. Wait, oops. Source equals images slash about me.jpg. So if we look at the about me page, there's a zoomed in gigantic photo. We don't want it that big, obviously. But that's the about me page right now. It's just this giant picture. But I'm gonna split that. But we could take care of it after we add the paragraph first. We'll do a paragraph. And maybe not just a paragraph. I probably want to structure it with like headings and multiple paragraphs. So I'll make a div to hold all of that. So it'll be an image plus a div with a paragraph with some generic text here. We'll say lorem 50. Just get like 50 lines of text. Let me see what that looks like. Well, if it's stretched out, it's just 2 lines, but it's not gonna be stretched out like that. We'll make it like nice and small a little bit, so it'll probably be multiple lines. Yeah, like that. Actually, that's even too short. Let's make it a little bit longer. Let's say lorem. Where did it go? Lorem 100. Okay, so now we got 100 lines of 100 words. I think that should be enough. And let's give that div let's give it a class. Let's say class equals bio. And we'll have a heading in there. Hi, I'm Steve or something. Welcome to my site. Okay, and we'll give that entire bio a different background color. Now, I created a about.css just so I could, organize my CSS, make it easier to find my styles. So here I'll say bio. Let's say background color. We'll use the light color var dash dash magnolia, and then we'll give it some padding. Let's say 20 pixels. And then for the paragraph inside, so bio paragraph, give that one a little bit of padding as well, say 10 pixels. And also for the bio, it's an H1, huh? I should make it an H2 because I'm already using H1 for the title, the about title at the top. So let's make it a smaller one. Let's say H2. H2, and then on about.css, say bio H2, padding 10 pixels. Also, we can mess with the line spacing as well. Like this text looks a little too close. I'm gonna say line height. Let's try 1.2 em. No, let's try 1.5. Oh, I'm putting it on the H2. Oops, I meant to put it on the paragraph. Okay, just to make the text like separated, just it looks a little bit nicer. You have some empty space. All right, but now what do we need to do is make this picture smaller, put it on this side, and then put this text on the right side. Now it can be easily accomplished with CSS Grid. So we just need to say for the bio, or not the bio, let me go back. What do we call the container? It's just main. Okay, so might wanna give it another class name. Let's say class main class equals about. Okay, because the other pages are also gonna have a main, and you don't want them all to be styled the same. All the mains are not gonna look the same. So I'm giving it a class of about. So that way, here I could style it, and the gallery page and the home page can have a different main, different styles. So we'll say about. We want it to be display grid, and grid template columns 1FR 1FR. So it's 2 columns. Okay, so there it is. Now it's 2 columns, but this is all on this side, and then this picture is still taking up this huge amount of space here. I think we need to just give that picture a width of 100% to take care of that. Whenever you have grid, well, before I say that so confidently, let me just try it out. But I'm guessing when you have grid, you say width of 100% on an image, it should only take up 100% of the column it's inside of. So since it's 1FR 1FR, should be 2 equal columns. So giving the image about image, we give it a width of 100%. That should take care of that. Yep, okay, just as I thought. So that's great and all, but what about this? Gotta do something about that. So here's what I'm thinking. We should change the height of both of these to a fixed height. We'll say for the image and actually the entire main area. So about. Remember, this is a main tag with a class of about. Main about. Let's say height. Now instead of 100% doesn't really work. We have to give it a height of 100 VH. Actually, it looks like it was working, but anyways, I'm giving the main about section a height of 100 VH, which is like 100%. VH means vertical height. So this entire main section, actually we need it to be slightly less than 100% because there's also this heading here that we need to account for. So because I want it to just take up, like right when you open the page, I want it to be the height of your page. And something broke when I did that. Let me go back. What was it about.css? Height 100 VH. Why did something break when I did that? Oh, because I put main. I meant main dot about, not main space. Main space about means something with a class of about inside main. But that's not what the case is. It's actually main with the class of about. It's not like a separate element inside main with the class of about. So that's why it's important there's no space there. Okay. And then let's add that height. So again, 100% doesn't really do anything. 100 VH. Actually, it's hard to tell if it is doing anything, but here you could tell the paragraph here. The height is always the entire thing here. So I think we need to give main about a background so you can see what's going on. Background color. Why don't we just give the entire main that light background color? Var -- magnolia. And then let's give this picture a height of 100%. But you see how it gets stretched? We don't want it to get stretched like this. So what you can do is say object fit. We'll say cover. Okay, so instead of stretching it, it'll just crop. Okay, and then I don't know, it seems kind of too big for me, so maybe we'll, instead of saying height 100%, let's figure out a different height for about, let's just say height like 600 pixels. Even that might be too much. Let's say 500 or 400. Is this doing anything at all? I can't tell. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. Main dot about height 400 pixels. I guess we don't really need it then. See, what's nice is it always has that same height for the picture and the text box. but whenever I make it smaller, it just grows to whatever it needs to. But that's pretty responsive. That's nice. Oh, and then another thing, if you have like an issue where maybe the menu is behind something else, there's a property called z-index. The higher the z-index, the higher your element is going to be in the stack. So talking about like closer to the screen, closer to you. So right now it's fine though because the menu is on top of everything. That's how I want it to be. But sometimes you have a problem where you got some elements going on top of the menu, and it should never look like that. You don't want your elements on the page covering the menu. So if that ever happens, use z-index, but z-index only works with position, something other than static. So whatever you put position, whatever you put the z-index on, you gotta also add position relative if you want to use z-index. Um, but anyways, I thought for a second it looked like the home, the thing was hiding behind this, but it's not. It's just that annoying thing that we have where it shows for a split second. Cool, and I think that's about it for the about page. Oh, actually no, it is too big here, so we gotta make it smaller. Let's say um, main class equals about. We don't want that main section to not be too big. Let me try this again. Height 400 pixels. I don't know why it's still huge like this. Maybe because actually I don't know why. Inspect. What's making it grow that big? If it's not the text is not doing it, so what is it? Oh, it's the image. Yeah, it's the image. Because it's trying to fill up half the page all the time, and it can't without getting bigger, so it's getting bigger, but it's also getting taller, so I think what we need to do is give it a fixed height or like a max height. So for the image, instead of height 100%, let's say max height 100% or something. I don't know if that's gonna help. Not really. And then this has a height of 400 pixels. Let's add overflow hidden. So if stuff doesn't fit inside, it's gonna get hidden. Oh, there we go. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Um, problem with overflow hidden though is the text that doesn't fit won't show. But what you could do about that is I'm gonna take off this max height. Probably don't need that anymore since I put overflow hidden over there. But what you could do is instead of saying overflow hidden, you could put overflow auto and it'll let you scroll. Okay, but I don't know, that might be an annoying user interface, like user experience, so I don't know. I don't know what the best way is to handle that issue right there. You gotta think about what you want exactly. You want this to always cover that area, then it's gonna have to have a height of 100%. And you want this to not be annoying like this. And I don't know. It's say max height 400 pixels. Overflow. Let's not do anything with the overflow. But if we don't, then it's like we didn't put it at all. So, anyways, I can't waste time trying to figure out what to do with this, but we have like 5 minutes until 8, even less, but I might go over a few minutes because I want to show you how to create the gallery. So let's just leave the about at that. I'll let you guys try to handle it, figure out what to do with the rest of that. But I'll give you whatever I finish today, and then it's up to you from there. So since I'm gonna do that, let's do the about page now, or the gallery page. So the gallery page is also gonna have a main, but let's give that class equals gallery. Okay, because about has a main with a class of about. Gallery will have a main with a class of gallery. And here, you could just put your image gallery in there. You could do this with background images on divs. So just create a bunch of divs with background images for all your images. Or you could do image tags. Easier though is just to do the background images, because if you do images, then you're gonna have to add that object fit. What was it? What I added on this one, object fit cover, and then give it a width and a height and all that. I mean, it's kind of the same. It's just this won't work in Internet Explorer, I think. So it's better to avoid using object fit if you can. I just use background images on divs. Okay. So I'm gonna decide. I'll just do the div method. Okay, but it's really both will work. So I'm gonna create a bunch of divs for how many pictures I want in the gallery. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do 6 because I'm not gonna have time to find that many pictures anyway. So if I have 6 images, that's enough to create a gallery with like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I mean, it's not much, but or we could do 2, 2, 2, 4, 6. So that part we'll decide with our CSS. So now I'm going to go to my gallery.css. I'm going to say main with the class of gallery. We want that to be display grid, grid template columns, 1fr, 1fr, or 1fr, 1fr, 1fr. I don't know, it's up to you. You want 3 columns or 2 columns or 4. And then for the divs inside there, you want them all to be the same height. Let's start off, let's do 300 pixels. And just so we could see them for now. I'm going to give them a background color. Okay, you can't really tell, but that should be a bunch of different boxes. Let's give them a border so you could see. There it is. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or we could go with 2 columns and have it like that. But it's up to you. Let's just go with the 3 of them like that. Okay, so instead of a background color, I'll just grab some random images. We got Unsplash open here, so let's just take just some random pictures. This one, and I'll take the small size just because it's a demonstration here. Let's do, it's kind of boring. Small, small. I need 6 of them, so small, small. I think that's 5, and then let's just take one more. Okay, so I've got a bunch of pictures. Let's take those out of the downloads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I'll cut these out and paste them in my portfolio. And just to make things easier for me, I'm going to call them image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, image 5, and image 6. Okay, I'm just renaming them so it's easier to add them. Alright, so main gallery div, they're all going to have a different background image, so you could give them each of the divs a different class name, and like you could say like class equals image 1, and then give the anything that has a class of image 1, give it that image as the background. But I'm going to do something else. I'm going to use a CSS child selector, the nth child selector. I think I've used it once before with you guys. Not sure, I forgot, but the way it works is this. So you have your gallery, right? And then it's got 6 children in there. This is the first child, this is the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So in gallery, I can say main dot gallery div colon nth dash child 1. That'll be the first image. I want that to have a background, not color, but background image of image 1. So we're gonna go into our images folder and grab image 1. Remember, dot dot forward slash means get out of the CSS folder because that's where we are with gallery.css. Go into the images folder and get image1.jpg. Okay, so because I named them image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, this should be a little bit easier. I'm just going to paste this a bunch of times. The first one will be image 1. The second one will be 2 and 2. This will be 3 and 3. 4 and 4. The fifth child will be the fifth image. And then finally the sixth one will be the sixth image. Okay, so nth child 1 is image 1, nth child 6 is image 6. Alright, so there they are, there's those pictures. If you want to make the images fit a little bit nicer, you can target all of them at once. You don't have to target each one individually, because remember, main gallery div, that applies to all of them. So here I can say background size cover, just like object fit cover, just background size cover, it does the same. And we can say background position center, just so the image is centered in there. Okay, but now we got like a nice little image gallery, and we can even add a media query real quick. Say add media screen and max dash width. Let's go with 800 pixels again. At that size, I'm just gonna change one thing. Change main gallery. I'm gonna say instead of grid template columns, 3 columns, I'll say 2 columns. So that way we can have 3 images full size, and then when we get to a smaller size, it'll switch to 2 columns. Or you could even say maybe do that for 1000 pixels. So at 1000 pixels, it'll become 2 columns. And then add another media query for smaller size at, let's say, 800. And at that size, we'll have 1 column. So we'll go from 3 columns to 2 columns to a single column for mobile devices. And at this point, we could get rid of that border. I don't want that border there. I mean, you could leave a border if you want, but I think it looks nicer without the border. Or if you are going to have a border, maybe make it white. That might look better. I don't know. But there's my gallery. Okay, so we got our home page, which has nothing on it. We got our about page with the photo and the bio next to it, which looks fine in certain sizes. Just full screen, it gets too big. But maybe we could take care of that with some padding that's only applied for large size. That's probably the best thing to do there. Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's say main gallery, or not main gallery, about CSS for main about. We'll say width or max width. I don't know, 700 pixels. Yeah, I think this is the best way to handle it so it doesn't get all huge. Max width, let's go 800. 700 might be unnecessarily small. And then to center it, just add margin auto. There we go. Okay, so that takes care of that. And still works nicely when you make it smaller, it'll do that. We could even add a media query to switch from 2 columns to a single column, but I think that's enough for now. So home, about, gallery, with a almost fully responsive navigation. We just didn't get to put the animation to turn this into an X, but I'll link you a video you can watch. Try to do that on your lab day. Okay, and I'll give you guys this as a reference, but you're gonna have to build something similar. Just put your own images and add your own content, but try to make use of the stuff I taught you using CSS to create all this stuff. Use CSS Grid, it's very useful. And use those media queries to make your page responsive for mobile devices. Cool. It should look fine on different devices. Okay, rotate that. How do you rotate again? Rotate. There we go. Our menu works. Everything is working nicely. Great. Okay, I'll post that and we can take a break now. Okay, let's take a break. And just check the notes folder where I put all of the other files. I'll put it in the same folder. Right here. And this one, I guess I'll leave it as portfolio. Alrighty, so here's the link to all of these. And the video lesson, I haven't uploaded last night's yet. Obviously, this one I haven't uploaded yet because we're still recording. But I'll upload it by the end of the night. So you'll have it tomorrow and Thursday to review. And don't forget, we'll have an exam. It'll be pretty easy. I'm just gonna ask you basic HTML, CSS questions. I don't know if I already have the quiz. I'm sure I've created it. I don't know if I saved it or I deleted it. But anyway, let's take a break. So break till. So let me open yesterday's lesson. Alright, so I used the for loop for this one to create a function that prints out whatever you pass in backwards. And for that, we just need to create a loop that counts backwards. So you start with the length of the string, whatever it is, -1 because we're counting from 0. So if the length of the string is like 8, then you're only going to count up to 7 because you're counting the 0 as well. So that's why I put a -1. So that's the number you start counting from, and this is the condition that has to be true for the loop to continue. As long as I is greater than -1 or 0 and greater, then it'll keep looping. So we're starting from, like, let's say 5 and we're counting down. Okay, now whenever we reach 0, then the loop ends. Okay, and it goes backwards because we're doing I minus minus. So each time you loop through, the I decreases. So you could also go the other way. Start with 0, like in this while loop, which is pretty much just like a for loop, except you can write these things outside. So let j equals 0 comes before this while loop, while the for loop has the let I equals 100, or the iterator is right there inside the for loop argument, or I don't know what you would call that. The for loop's different. It's not like a function. So whatever this area is called for the for loop, that's where you write it. And then the while loop, you could do it outside, and then you could do the iterate or you could increase or decrease inside the while loop. So you could also do it with the for loop, I think. Like if I didn't put I minus equals 5 here, I could probably remove that and put it here. Might still work. Let me just test it out. Yeah, it's still working. We got our 5s and our 10s. It's still counting. Unless, let me refresh the page. Yeah, it still works. So for loop, while loop is almost the same thing. We'll keep that there. So before I got distracted yesterday trying to do something I couldn't figure out, I mentioned you could have a loop inside a loop, and that comes in handy when you're trying to sort through something. So let's create a sorting algorithm. Let me see if I could do it without referencing the one that I already created. It's always harder when I'm under pressure trying to show it to you guys. Can't really think freely, so bear with me. I might have to go reference the finished one, but say we have an array of numbers. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 5. Actually, let's not have the same number. We'll pick different numbers. And I'm going to just make it in random order, okay? Because the point of this is we're going to create a function that sorts it for us. So let's say 4, 1, 7, 3, 2, 9, 8. What number are we missing? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Just put that 6 there too. So how can you create a function that sorts this for you? Well, you're going to need a loop inside a loop. So we're going to create a for loop. Let's say for let I equals 0, I is less than array.length, I plus plus. Our basic for loop. Start with 0. Length is spelled wrong. Most of the time you see a for loop, it's going to look just like this. You start with 0, I is less than array.length, whatever array you're trying to go through, and then I plus plus. So just count by ones. Okay, and then immediately right after, we're going to say for let j equal 0. J is less than array.length, j plus plus. Okay, so we got two loops. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop through each number. We're going to look at the number, so we're going to stop at 4, and then we're going to compare the 4 to the 1, the 7, the 3, the 2, the 9, the 8, the 5, the 6. We're going to see if it's greater than the number next to it. So if 4 is greater than the number next to it, 4 would be I0, or 4 would be array 0, right? If we were going to grab that 4 out of this array, it would be array 0, or let's call this mynums. Mynums, okay. Mynums, okay. just so you don't get confused. That's just an array, and we're gonna be looking at each index of the array. So index 0 of the array is the 4. And then what's next to index 4? I mean, what's next to index 0? It's gonna be index 1, right? Or in other words, it's gonna be index 0 plus 1. If you wanted my nums, this one, if you want the second number, it would be 0 plus 1, right? So what we're gonna do is the I is gonna represent one of the numbers. We're gonna say if my nums I is greater than my nums I plus 1. I think I'm doing it. Let me think about it for a second. If my nums I, which is the current one that we're looping through, if it's greater than my nums I plus 1, I might be doing this wrong. Okay, I'll reference it just because I don't want to waste time. I have it here. I always forget. I've done it a million times, but one of these exercises, there's bubble sort. Actually, no, that's an animation. I think this is it. Open with Notepad. There we go. So there's the bubble sort. Oh, I see. Okay, we're supposed to use the J. What do we do with the I then? Oh, the I is just the outer loop. We don't really mess with the I. That's just to loop through the entire array. So we're going to be looking at J. Okay, so for let I equal 0, I is less than nums dot length, I plus plus. That's the outer loop. So it's going to go through each number. And it's going to go through it for each number, it's going to go through the entire array. So for the 3, it's going to go through the entire array. For the 6, it's going to go through the entire array. For the 4, it's going to look through the entire array. So that's where the second loop comes in. So the first loop is to look at each letter or each number here. And then the second loop inside that is for each of those numbers to check the whole thing again. Okay. And then we have a steps here. This is actually not necessary. That's just if I wanted to count how many steps it takes to solve it. So that's really not necessary. But whatever, I'll leave it there, but just ignore that one. If nums j is greater than nums j plus 1, meaning if the current number that you're on, so we're looking at the 3, right? If the 3 is greater than what's after the 3, which is the 6, then we switch them. Okay, this is like a easy way to switch. You say nums j comma nums j plus 1, put those in square brackets, equals nums j plus 1 nums j. So you just like switch it around. It's just a short way of switching things. So let me show you an example so that makes sense. So if we have a array, let's say let nums equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you wanted to switch, let's say, the 1 and the 5, what would you have to do? You'd have to say nums 0 equals nums 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because looking at the fourth index, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the fifth, 5 over here. So nums 0 is the 1, nums 4 is the 5. So if you did num 0 equals num 4, then you're basically going to change this 1 to a 5. Okay? But then if you wanted to also change the 5 to a 1, you can't anymore because now that 1 is also a 5. So you can't say num 0 equals num 4 and then nums 4 equals nums 0, because by that point, by the time you get to this line, you turned both of them into 5s. So it's still going to be a 5. You're not going to switch it to a 1. Let me just, oops, I put num there accidentally. Nums 4. So if you look at nums right now, you'll see it's 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 5, 2, 3, 4, 1 like you would expect. Because like I said, once this line runs, you're already changing the 1 to a 5, and then down here you're trying to change this to whatever this is, but this is a 5 now. So instead of doing it that way, you could do this. You can say inside brackets, you say nums 0, nums 4 equals nums 4, oops, nums 0. Okay, so you could do it this way, and you'll basically switch the two. So inside brackets, nums 0, comma nums 4 equals nums 4, comma nums 0. So if we do that, and we check nums, now you can see it's 5, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so I'm going to have to use that method to switch the two, because I'm going to be looking through each of these, right? Look at the 4, and I'm going to compare the 4 to whatever's after the 4. And if whatever's after the 4 is greater than the 4, or I guess no, we're trying to go from in increasing order, right? We want the smallest numbers first. So if the 4 is greater than the 1, then we want to switch them. Okay, so that's why we have to use that technique. We're going to check if my nums j is greater than my nums j plus 1. My nums j, my nums j plus 1 equals in a separate bracket, okay, equals my nums j plus 1, comma, my nums j. That makes sense? So we have these, it's basically the reverse, right? This is my nums j plus 1. This is my nums j plus 1, my nums j. So that would be how you would switch them. So if you come across an index whose the value of is greater than the value of the index next to it, then you'll switch them. Okay, and you'll do that as many times as you have objects in that array. So that's what that outer loop is for. Okay, so you're gonna do that 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 7 times, or no, 9 times, because I got 9 numbers here. So the outer loop is just to make sure that you do this inside one 9 times to make sure you cover all of them. And I think that's probably it. I think that's all we need to do. Let me open the server. Let's check if it works. Gonna inspect. So I'm just gonna look at let's ignore that one. I'm gonna look at my nums. And you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I actually did sort it. Now if you want to do this with a function, be able to use any array that you pass to it, then we just have to put this in a function. Okay, but one more time, just so it makes sense. We have a for loop on the outside. So this for loop is gonna happen mynums.length times. Okay, so mynums.length is 9 right now. So this is gonna happen 9 times. So 9 times you're gonna check each number. So the 4, you're gonna check if it's greater than the 1. And then you're gonna move on to the 1. Wait, you're gonna check the 4, see if it's greater than the 1, but you're also gonna check if the 4 is greater than the 7. Actually, is it gonna do that, or am I mistaken? Let's see. The outer loop is gonna count. Actually, the outer loop doesn't represent any of the indexes. It's just the number of times you're gonna repeat this. So this one is the one that the j is gonna represent the current index. So first you're gonna look at the first one, 0. Then you're gonna look at when it's gonna say j++. That 0 is gonna turn into a 1. And then you're gonna be checking the next number. And then you're going to check if that number is greater than the one next to it. So you check these two. If this is bigger, you switch them. Then you check these two. So it's going to look like this. So first, it will look like this, right? But then the first time you loop through, you're going to check the 4 and the 1. Let me just copy paste this. So you're going to check the 4 and the 1, but the 4 is going to be greater than the 1, so they're going to switch. Right? This is when j equals 0. So while j is 0, you're going to be looking at the first two numbers, and then you're going to switch them. And then when j is to 1, because you're iterating to the next number, then you're going to be checking the next two numbers. So next you're going to be checking the 4 and the 7, because now j is 1. So at index 1 is the 4. So you're going to be looking at j, and you're going to be looking at j plus 1. So you're going to be looking at 4, because that's at index 1. And then you're going to be looking at index 1 plus 1, which is at index 2. 0, 1, 2. So you're going to compare those. Is this one bigger than this? Not. Then you skip it. You move on to the next one. You look at the 7 and the 3. So the 7 and the 3, let me just erase these. Okay, so you're going to look at the 4 and the 1. They're going to switch to look like that. The 4 and the 7 are not going to switch because the 4 is not greater than the 7. The 7 and the 3 are going to switch. Okay. Next, you're going to look at, let's see, this is index 0, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. I think we're at this already. So then you're going to check the 7 and the 2 and so on and so forth. You get the idea, right? You're just going to keep checking them. But what happens when you go through it one time? This is where the outer loop comes in, right? Or else we could have just stuck with a single for loop for the j's. But why did I add the second outer loop? Because if I go through this one time, yeah, I'll switch, the 1 and the 4 will get, the 4 and the 1 will get switched, and then the 7 and the 3 will get switched. Then the next two numbers, the 2 and the 7, will get switched. And then say the 9 and the 8 get switched. And then 5 is not greater than 6, so they won't get switched. So what happens is you end up with something that's not fully sorted, right? If you only looped through one time, you'd end up with this. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you'd get 1, 4, 3, 2, 7, 8, 9, 5, 6. So you would need to go through it again and again. So you'd have to start over. So once you go through all of them, you'd have to restart and then go through this one again and look at the 1 and the 4, and then look at the 4 and the 3, and then switch it again. Okay, and you'd have to do that 9 times in order to go through each number and fully sort the whole thing. Okay, so that's why there's this outer for loop, to make sure you do this 9 times, not just one time, because one time is not going to sort it completely. You have to keep doing it until you cover every pair. That makes sense? I do have a YouTube video explaining it, sort of. I don't know if it explains it any better than I just explained it now, but there is a little animation with it. But look up bubble sort, because this is just one type of sorting algorithm. This one's called the bubble sort. Okay, and it's not the best way to do it. There's better ways, because the bubble sort is kind of inefficient. Because even if you go through like one time and you end up sorting it, you're still gonna repeat this whole step 9 times, even if the first time was enough. Okay, because it doesn't look at if it worked or not. It's just gonna keep checking anyway. So you might end up going through unnecessary steps to solve it and just waste extra time. And the amount of time it takes to solve one of these increases exponentially whenever you add more numbers. It takes longer and longer to solve it, and it's like an exponential curve. So the curve would look like, just shoot straight up. Okay, bigger numbers or bigger sets of arrays will take a really long time to solve. But most of the sorting algorithms are like that. They're exponential. But there are some that are a little bit faster. Like there's instead of the bubble sort, you could do, I forgot what the other one was called. Let me see if I have an example of it saved here somewhere. Maybe I have it here. That's the bubble sort. And then the selection sort is a different sorting algorithm. This one's a little more efficient, I think. Why? Because it works a little bit different. Where the bubble sort checks each pair as many times as you have numbers in the array. This one only checks, it compares one number to the entire array, and then checks the next number and compares it to the entire array, and then it checks the next number. So let's look at how that one works. You have, again, a loop inside a loop, which is why it's going to increase exponentially, the amount of time it takes to solve it. So you start again with I equals 0, I is less than array.length, I plus plus. But for the inside loop, you're gonna just check the you're gonna see j equals I plus 1, j is less than array dot length, j plus plus. So immediately you're kind of using them together this time. This isn't just repeating this a certain number of times for no reason. Instead, you're seeing here it says let j equals I plus 1. So if I is 0, j is going to be 1, right? It's going to be the number next to the 0. And what's going to happen is if array I is greater than array j, remember array I is 0, let's say. If j is I plus 1, then j is the number next to it. If the I is greater than the j, then again you're going to switch them. Okay, so what makes this more efficient is you're only going to, like, let's say you get to the fifth number. The fifth number, what's after the fifth number? It's the sixth number. So you're not going to be checking the numbers that came before it. You're going to loop through this many times. You're still going to loop through the entire array, as many numbers as you have in the array, but you're not going to be checking the entire array each time. You're only going to be checking what's left. Okay. I wish there was a nice way to show it, but let me see if I could. Let me open Illustrator. I might be able to explain it better if I draw a picture. But bubble sorting is, it might be like an interview question. If you ever need to like do an interview for some kind of programming job, they'll probably ask you about these algorithms. So it'd be good to understand how to do it. So I actually have an animation of this, but I don't want to go to YouTube right now. So let me just show you like this. We have, imagine instead of numbers, I have bars of different length. Okay, some are taller, some are shorter. And imagine you're trying to sort it from smallest to tallest. Okay, so if you're gonna sort this, the bubble sort, the way the bubble sort works is you look at the first two numbers. If this is bigger than this one, you switch them. If not, you move on to the next two. Okay, next you look at these two. If this is bigger than this one, then you switch them. So in step 2 of this one, these two would switch. Okay, next you look at the next two. You look at this one and this one. They don't need to switch, so you don't switch them. Okay. Next step, you look at these two. They need to switch, so you switch them because this one's bigger. Let me make that smaller. And then the next step, you switch these two. Right? And then that's your first. This is when I is 0. Okay. And then if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that means you're gonna keep doing that until I becomes 6, right? So let I equal 0, I is less than my nums dot length, I plus plus. This outer loop represents all of these steps together. So this is I equals 0. Okay. And then, but each of these, you're looking at the j at that point. There's that inner loop with the j. So j equals 0, j equals 1, 2, 3, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should be counting up to 5. I skipped one step, I think. Anyways, you're gonna do that 5 times, okay? You're gonna do this 5 steps, once for when I is 0, and then when I equals 1, you're gonna do it again, and then when I equals 2, you're gonna do it again, and it doesn't matter if it gets solved already. If at that point it's solved, you're still gonna repeat this until I is less than numbers dot length. Okay, so anyways, you're gonna repeat that 5 times. These 5 steps, or 6 steps actually, because we're counting from 0. These 6 steps, you're gonna repeat 6 times. Okay, so that's with the bubble sort. But with the selection sort, it's a little bit different. With the selection sort, let me just bring this back. Let's make that smaller. Right, because again, we're saying while I is less than array dot length. You're gonna go through this. So if the array dot length is 6, because you got 6 things here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the length of the array, imagine. So while I is less than 6, you're gonna be looping through. So you're gonna keep going until I is equal to 5. So you're gonna repeat that 5 or 6 times. And we're counting from 0. And then inside that loop, you have another loop that's running, which is, using j instead of I as the temporary variable to count. So you're gonna do that 6 times. So 6 times 6, that's 36 steps to solve an algorithm to sort 6 numbers. Basically, it'll take 36 steps. Okay, but with the selection sort, it's a bit different because well, let's look at it real quick. You're still gonna be sorting through the entire. You're gonna be looping through the entire array for the outer array. So you're still gonna have 6 steps, but the inner step is gonna be different because for this loop, you're gonna be checking. J is always gonna equal I plus 1. Okay, so j is never gonna be less than I here, meaning. Let's erase this real quick, all of these except for 1. Meaning j is going to start off equal to 1, right? Because j equals I plus 1. Right? We're saying for let j equals I plus 1, j is less than array dot length. So j is going to be I plus 1, so it's going to be 1 first. So you're going to loop through, but you're going to be comparing if array I is greater than array j, meaning you're going to be checking again the first and the second one. Okay, but let's see. If array I is greater than array j, you're going to switch them. I don't know if this is a proper selection sort. This looks a lot like the bubble sort. I don't know if I did it correctly. But yeah, if array I is greater than array j, you switch them. So what's gonna happen here? You're gonna look at the first two. Let's see, j equals 1. Next, j is gonna equal to, actually here j is still gonna be 1, right? Because j equals I plus 1. So I is still 0 here, so j is still 1. So how are we sorting through it? Again, this is unnecessary, but j equals 1. J is less than or equal to length, j plus plus, j. Here, let me put the animation. It'll make more sense once I show you the little bit of animation I have. Actually, I don't know if animation works because it uses Flash. I made it with Flash, but nowadays you can't get a Flash player. Where did it go? Yeah, if I try to open it, it just downloads instead of playing. Not sure how I would play this animation. Maybe in the... Nope, it just downloads instead of playing. I need a SWF player for this to work. Let's see. Oh, I have it on YouTube. So let me just show you the YouTube video. Let me find it first. I mean, you could just search selection sort and then it'll come up, but let me show you the one animation that I made. There it is. Okay, here's my explanation of bubble sort in 3 minutes. Let's say, and a selection sort. Okay, squared. Okay, so here's a comparison of the two. And we'll repeat that again as by the J. So here's an animation that the time it takes to solve. Okay, so here's an animation. It's pretty much what I tried to explain in Illustrator. You have the outer loop, the I, and you have the inner loop, the J. Okay, to help you understand it a little better, we have a outer loop. So you're gonna look at the first two numbers. And the inner loop is represented by the J. So we're gonna check the current number and the next number. If the current number is bigger than the next, we switch them. So if not, we go to the next. This is bigger than this, you switch them. So we switch them. Okay. This case again, it's bigger, so you switch it. So it'll just keep going through, switching the bigger number with the smaller number if the smaller number comes after the bigger one. And it'll repeat that again as many times as we have. And you're gonna do that items in the array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, solves 8, 9, 10 times because we have 10 things in the array. Okay, it's again, so the I is gonna keep increasing until the I becomes 10. Then it's done. Just to give you a different algorithm to compare this to, here's solving it. A selection sort. Okay, selection sort works a little bit differently, but it still has a big O of n squared. Selection sort. So again, it's not the best way, but it is faster. Okay. And the reason why I think it's faster is because you're not with the selection sort. The J keeps increasing, but you keep comparing whatever J is to I. So if it ends up being smaller than the I, then you switch them. So what makes that faster is as the I increases, you never look at the previous numbers because you always, like when I is 0, J is going to be 1, J is going to be 2, J is going to be 3. It's going to check all of them, and if any of them are smaller than what I currently is, it's going to switch it. And then when it's done looking at all of those, it's going to end up putting the smallest one in there. Then it's going to look at the next one. It's going to check if anything else is smaller than it. If not, it's going to move on to the next one. So it's never going to do these extra steps from the beginning. Where this one goes through the entire thing, this one only looks at the rest of it. So I think I did do it correctly. I just wasn't understanding it when I was staring at it here. But yeah, because J is still gonna increase, right? Even though here we're comparing J to 0 at first, but then J increases. We check here. Let's look at it like this. So J equals 2. It's gonna start off. It's always gonna start off as 1 greater than I, but then it's gonna keep increasing. So at first we're gonna check if anything is smaller than this one, right? So if it finds this one is smaller, it's gonna switch the two. And then you're gonna move on to the next step. So let me delete that. Then you're gonna look at this one. You're gonna compare it to all of them and check if anything is smaller than it. If it is, they're gonna switch. Right, but we're still looking at this. This is smaller, we're still gonna switch it. Okay, and then nothing else is smaller, so then we move on to the next one. If anything is smaller than it, we switch it. Right, then move on to the next one. If anything's smaller, we switch it. Switch this one because it's smaller. And then move on to the next one and then switch it. Okay, but the point is you're never looking back on this one. You just continue moving forward. You never look back. So you don't count like the ones you've already passed over. Okay. And then that's why I put that steps here, steps plus equals 1, just to count the number of steps the selection sort takes to sort the algorithm, to sort the array, and then this one counts the number of steps it takes to solve it with the bubble sort. Okay. So in the inner loop, every time J increases, I add 1 to the steps to count that step. Okay. That's how I count it. So let me just, instead of rewriting these, let me copy paste it. And then there's other ones too. There's other algorithms. These are the only two I've actually tried using or creating. So I'm sure there's better, more efficient ones out there. So this is selection, sort. This is bubble sort. Okay, so again, you're gonna have I equals 0, and while I is 0, we're gonna check J equals I plus 1. And then while J is less than array.length, J is gonna increase. Okay, but it's gonna start off as 1. Then J is gonna increase to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I is still gonna be 0. So you're still gonna be comparing it to the first number. Right, so I equals 0. Let's not forget that, right? So I is always 0 for this one right here. Actually, sorry, the entire thing here, it's always going to be 0. So it's kind of unnecessary writing it again here. But j equals 1. J is next going to be 2. So when j is 1, you're still comparing it to the I, which is 0. So you're comparing this to this. If this is bigger, we'd switch it, but it's not. Okay, then we check this one with this one. Right, we're taking turns comparing to this first one. We're comparing to index I, which at first is 0. Okay, and then whenever it's 1, then we start comparing index 1. So we compare this one to all of these, because while j is going to be representing the other ones, I is going to represent, this one right here. And I don't know, it's really hard to explain. But is it making sense, you guys? Am I explaining it in a proper way? Let me know if you're not getting it. I wish I could. Like, how else can I put it? I know, maybe if I just use different colors. Let's use blue for the I, red for the J. So while I is 0, right, this is going to be the blue one. J is going to be the red one. Okay, so does that make sense? You're going to be comparing the blue to the red each time. Right, so here, there's nothing smaller than that, so nothing happens. Next step, J is 2, so J is going to be, actually we skipped already. J is 1 here, so we compare this to, we compare this to the red. If this is smaller than this, or I mean, if this is bigger than this, we switch them. It's not, so we leave it alone. Then we compare this to the next number after that one. So we skip this one because it wasn't bigger, or it wasn't smaller than this, so we move on to the next one. Compare it, nothing changes. Again, nothing changes because this is the smallest one. So this first, while I is 0, nothing really switches because the first bar here is already shorter than everything. So we move on to the next one. In the next one, we're checking Now I gotta change these colors. Now this one is gonna represent I, and it's gonna represent I in all of these, right? So we're gonna check what comes after the I. This one. Check these two. It turns out this is smaller than that, so in the next step they need to switch. Okay, but now I still represents this one though. Okay, and then let's make this one black. Next, we're gonna compare this one to this one. This one's smaller, so nothing changes. Next, we're gonna compare. Let me put these here because they switched. Okay, next we're gonna compare this to this one. And they're gonna have to switch, so in the next one here, we'll rearrange these. They're gonna have to switch. So now this one comes here, this one comes here. Actually, now we're gonna be comparing that last one, so that one should be red. But you get the idea, right? While I remains the same, here we're always going to be checking. First, we're going to be checking the first one, comparing it to the entire rest of the array. Then we're going to be checking the second one and comparing it to the entire rest of the array. And then, I don't know, you get the idea, right? So the selection sort is going to be more efficient no matter what. Makes sense? Anyways, let's close that. Getting a headache from drawing those. All right. So bubble sort goes through the entire thing, times, but the selection sort goes through the entire thing minus one each step. So it's like not as many steps, right? Let's create a variable here. Let bubble, or let's say bubble steps equals 0. So each time we go through here, each time we loop through inside the inner array, I'm going to increase it. I'm going to say bubble steps plus equals 1. And then each time we loop through this one, I'm going to say selection steps plus equals 1. So I'm going to have to create selection steps. And then let's see what they look like? Open. And they're both looping through. Oh, actually, sorry, we can't do that like that because um, this is gonna sort through this. It's gonna sort it, and then this is not gonna have anything left to sort. So, but then it doesn't matter. The steps are still gonna be the same. The number of steps it takes. So let's see how many steps they take. See bubble steps. We see there's 81 steps. Why 81? Because I have 9 numbers, 9 times 9. So there's actually total 81 steps that this has to go through to solve it. But if we look at selection steps, oh, it's 0. Why is it 0? I'm not sure. Probably because I solved it with this one and then this didn't have anything to sort, maybe. Unless I typed something wrong. Selection steps plus equals 1. No, let's do let's give them different numbers to sort through. I mean, it'll be the same set of numbers. Be my num's 1 and my num's 2. So this bubble sort will be looking at my num's 1. And this one will be looking at my nums 2. Oh, sorry, I didn't put my nums here. I put array. Okay, well, let's put my nums 2 in there. So Control C, Control D D D D D, Control V, backspace 2. Boom. Okay, that's a quick way to change all of those. So bubble sort, bubble steps 81, selection steps. Why is it still 0? Oh, because I made it a function. That's why. Let me take it out. Let's just remove it from the function so it just runs automatically. Selection steps 36, bubble steps 81. So that just proves that the selection sort is much more efficient than the bubble sort. Okay. So if you have to create a sorting algorithm, try to remember how this works and understand how it works. Again, you're going to be looping through, but comparing j always to whatever I is currently at. So because you're not going backwards, you're never checking what came before 0, or like when this increases to 4, you're not checking 3 and 2 and 1 anymore. You're just checking what comes after and just comparing it to the entire array. So it saves you a bunch of steps. This is small enough that I'll just paste it in the Discord so you guys can try it out. Actually, let me give you the entire thing here. Control C. Just paste that somewhere in your VS Code, or even you could paste it in the console too, in the window, I think, to try it out. There you go. Anyways, that's bubble sort. It's pretty tough to understand the first time you're trying to learn it. So I don't blame you if you didn't get it, but I think I spent enough time on that trying to explain it. Okay, let's see what else. There's other algorithms you can try out. Let me see what I have here. So I showed you how to do reverse characters, right? You could use a loop to reverse a word, write it backwards. Let's look at how would you capitalize all the letters of something. And I actually actually have like 5 different solutions for that. How to capitalize. Um, let's open this with VS Code though. It's easier to read that way. And I've commented all of them, but let me comment something back in. Let's start with the first one. How about that? The first one is the longest. So I did it with 12 lines and then with 10 lines and then 11 and 8 and 7. So I tried different ways to write the same, create a function that does the same thing. Right, so solution 1, 12 lines. So we called it function cap, so for capitalize. So just gave it a name cap, takes in a string. We take the string and we use the string dot split method, which is a way to convert a string into an array. So if you ever do string dot split, you can convert a string into an array. So if you have that string equal hello, and you want to convert hello into an array with one letter for each array item, you could say string dot split, and then give it, what do you want to split by? If you just put empty quotes, it will just separate each letter, right? So string dot split returned an array out of this string. Now, it didn't change the original string, I don't think, right? The original string is still hello. It's just when you do string dot split, it returns an array for you. So if you wanna save that, you're gonna have to say let split string or something equal string dot split. Okay, if you want to save it, so split string. Now we have the array version of the string. So I'm using that to first whatever word you pass in. Okay, so the point of this again is to capitalize. So whatever you pass in, we're gonna convert it into an array. Then we're gonna create another empty array to hold like the new string that we're gonna be creating. So at first it's gonna be an array and then it's gonna get converted into a string. So basically we're gonna do the opposite of split after at the end. Okay, so let capitalize string equal this empty array, and then we're gonna loop through the string. We'll say string dot for each word. So we're gonna split the word into an array, and then we're going to splice, which basically means splice will take the letter at that index and add one. Like this represents what you want to switch. This represents how many characters you want to add in there. Actually, let me. So I didn't expect this to get into so many different array methods, but splice. Let's look at a good example on W3 Schools. So you have fruits, banana, orange, apple, mango. So if you say fruit splice to 0, it means at position 2, which is 0, 1, 2. So at apple, you want to add lemon and kiwi after apple. You can see here it's banana, orange, apple, mango is the original. Now it's banana, orange, lemon, kiwi, apple, mango. So it's adding lemon and kiwi in position 2. So wherever apple is, it's inserting lemon and kiwi. So it's inserting it before apple, basically. It's inserting lemon and kiwi before there. And the 0 just means don't remove anything. So if we put a 1 here and hit run, you can see apple gets removed. If you put 2 there, then mango will also get removed. So this represents what you wanna, where you wanna insert these strings, or I mean, you don't have to insert 2 things, by the way. You could put 1 thing, or you could put more than 1. You could put more than 2. But that represents where you want to put it. This represents how many things you want to remove out of it. And this is just what you're inserting, okay? So at position 0, so the first item right at the front of the array, I want to remove 1 thing. So I'm going to remove the first letter. And then I'm going to capitalize the first letter and insert that into its place. So basically, delete the letter, put the capital letter in its place. And then I'm going to join it back together, because when I did split, I turned it into an array. And then capped string was that empty array in the beginning. I'm going to push the word into it. So this is going to have the word inside, but it's going to do it for each word inside whatever string I pass into it. So if I say hello world, that's 2 words. So for hello, word is gonna represent hello, and then next world is gonna represent the word. So it's gonna loop through twice, basically. So string dot for each, right? Because the string that we're passing in is gonna get split by spaces. Because there's a this isn't just this. If I just did that, it would split it by each character. But if you put a space, it's gonna split it by each word. So let's take it step by step and try to explain it when we're kind of out of time. But I really want to show you how this first solution works. And then you could look at even better solutions. This one uses the most lines, 12 lines. But then there's a version here that only uses 7 lines to achieve the same thing. But let's do the hard one first, okay? And then I'll give you this little document so you guys can look through the other ways to do it. It's just good practice. As you know, when you're first learning JavaScript, I think it's good to don't worry about like creating web pages and stuff, because you're not going to use pure JavaScript to create web pages anyway. You're going to have to get into frameworks and libraries, and in order to understand those good enough to start building websites with them, you have to understand JavaScript better, and by doing these exercises, it'll help you. So let's open up the browser. Okay, so function cap string. I'm going to take in a string, okay? And string equals string dot split. So let's say the string is hi, my name is David. Let string equal that. If that's the string and you do string dot split, or you split this represents what you want to split by. So if I want, I could put like the letter I. So wherever there's an I, it'll use that I as a separator. So it'll basically turn H into an array item, and then the comma and everything else until the next I. So basically, look, we have H, and then the comma plus my name, the space, and it sees the I. It thinks, okay, that's a separator. So it uses the I as a separator for the next item in the array. But obviously that's not how we want to use it. We want to split by spaces. So hi, my name is David. So everywhere there's a space, it puts a comma basically. It creates an array separated by the spaces. So if you pass in a sentence, it's going to take each word in the sentence, separate it, and then it's going to loop through each of the words because we're doing string dot for each. So this is string. It's an array. For each means we're going to look at each item in the array. So for each word, we're going to split the word now. So now the word is going to get split into an array. And then we're going to do splice, which again takes the first letter. So we're going to look at the H. We're going to remove the H because we put 1 here. So we're going to insert something at index 0, which is the H. We're going to remove one item, so that H is going to get removed. If we put 2 here, it would remove the H and the I, but we're only putting a 1. If we put a 0, then it wouldn't remove the H. It would just put something in front of it. Okay, but it's a 1 again, so that 1 just means remove one item from index 0. And then insert in its place, because this third item is what's going to go in there. So the first thing is where you want to insert. The second thing is how many items you want to remove. And the third thing here is what you want to put at that point. So we want to put word 0 dot to uppercase. So word 0 meaning the H. So if the H is not capital, it's going to make it capital, and it's going to stick it in the front. Okay, then that word that we split up and we put a capital letter in front of, we're going to join it back into a string because it was an array at that point. And then we have this capped string array that we're going to push the word into. Okay, and that capped string is outside of the for each loop. So every time we loop through, get to a new word, we're going to add that word into the capped string array. And then at the end, we're going to join all those words together into a new sentence with all of the capitalized letters and return that. So if you look at it like that, I hope it makes more sense if I explain it like that. And then if you look at the other solutions, you'll realize there's multiple ways to solve different problems. So what took me 12 lines up there, I could do in just 7 lines if I don't worry about converting the string. Actually, I still do convert. I do still split the string, but it's just a lot shorter. So here we have an empty string for representing the words. Then we're gonna say let word of string dot split. Actually, this is a different kind of for loop that I didn't go over with you guys. This is the for of loop, which is a for loop, but but it's still for arrays, but I don't know. I guess it's an alternative. You could use that, or you could use a for each. Just another way of writing the for each loop. But say let word of string dot split. So basically, if you take that string that we passed in and split it, and then loop through each of the words, and say word plus equals word 0 dot to uppercase, meaning this empty string, we're gonna add whatever the first letter is in the word. We're going to capitalize it and add it to the string. And then we're going to add the rest of the word basically, except for the first letter. So word.slice. Slice is another thing. It's similar to splice, but slice basically, if you say slice 1, it's going to remove whatever's at index 1 and or whatever's before index 1 and give you the rest. So word.slice 1 plus a space. Okay, because we want to basically capitalize the first letter, and then the second letter and onwards, we want to add a space after it and include that in this string. So it's like this. Let's say you have a word hello. You're gonna, oh geez, it's 9:53 already. Let me give you the sign out code so you don't have to stay if you don't want to. And let me give you the sign out question as well. What happened to Google Classroom? No, it's still here. Sign out. Tuesday, the 17th. What's the sign out code? Sign out code for tonight is 777. Triple sevens. There's the sign out code. So, good night. And I'll post this in the OneDrive so you guys can see it. And it's gonna be commented out, so you're gonna have to uncomment if you wanna try these out. I'll leave the first one uncommented. You're welcome. Good night.